machine.
Gentlemen, start your engines. Yeah, greetings, heathens and heretics. It's I don't fucking know. It's just another week, innit? Yeah. Welcome back again, post Easter and all that. After the resurrection of, is that what it is? Easter? Is it resurrection or death of? I don't.
Both, apparently. We get spoiled.
Okay, all right, okay, bit of both. All right, fair enough.
It's like commiserations followed by celebrations, I think,
and chocolate eggs and all that. So yeah,
let's not forget what's important.
Yeah, well, what's important is you know, the smorgasbord that is looking back on March's metal albums, basically, isn't it? Because that's why we're here, and a few gigs and a couple of other odds and sods. Because yeah, I mean, it wasn't the good evening both, by the way. Sorry, we are Sans Padre this week, so it's the three of us, myself, the voice of reason, and the one that hits things, who's it's his birthday tomorrow, so everyone wish him happy birthday.
Hey.
He's
I wish you happy birthday tomorrow. There you go.
Yeah, tomorrow, but it'll be tomorrow, but it'll be yesterday as this episode goes out, or I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But yeah, another step closer to 50. So
it is. We'll be celebrating in style as well.
Fucking right, we will. Which we'll talk about a little bit more next week. But yeah, March wasn't a huge amount out that was sort of massively exciting, was it? But there was a few sort of key releases, and there were some absolutely cracking gigs as well. So I think it's just as much about that as it is about the albums. Shall we kick off with? I tell you what, let's kick off with Judas Priest at Wembley, because obviously Invincible Shield came out last month, so all kind of ties in, and all three of us were at Priest, so we haven't really talked about it on here yet at all. So I think it's only right that we do, really, innit? So did we all enjoy it, gentlemen?
Well, awkward silence. I thought it's fucking fantastic.
Absolutely.
It was so just to briefly mention the album, because you said there wasn't a lot of exciting albums that came out. I think, really, to be honest, I was a bit shell shocked, because for me, Judas Priest dominated. Like, when that album dropped, I've been anticipating it, and it's a really strong record. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it is.
And it just kind of left me in a bit of a daze. So I've not listened to a lot else, to be honest. A few bits and pieces have caught my attention, so we'll talk about that as well. But the gig itself, I mean, every once in a while, I think a gig comes along that just elevates itself above, the kind of standard fare, and I just think there was something really special about that night. I really do. Saxon were great. I didn't see Uriah Heep, but I'm told they were good. A brief set, I think, but
yeah, about half hour thing they had, didn't they? That's all, but
yeah,
pretty standard.
Priest, I think, were absolutely on fire.
Yeah, they really were, and I think that we touched on it when we were talking about Priest last month, and we did the countdown. Plus, we have mentioned it, but Rob sounded just fucking absolutely on fire, didn't he? Just sounded great. Even those odd moments where he just absolutely pushed himself to the limit, and it just cracked, just broke that little bit. You just tell he's still giving it all the beans. There's no sort of phoning it in. It's just full on Rob Halford to his max.
Do you know, I read I didn't read an interview. It was like a YouTube interview I watched of Rob Halford, and he made a really good point, and he was just talking about performing, and he said, when we, as in Judas Priest, we go on stage, we never forget that people have put their hands in their pockets and spent money. They've taken money out of their wages and chosen to spend it on, this gig or this record or whatever. He's talking about gigs. So what better reason to give it 110%?
Yeah.
And I just thought, yeah, fair play to you.
Yeah.
And that's what we got. We got them firing on all cylinders. And I think I kept because I had my kids with me, and they loved it too. They thought it was amazing, and I kept just leaning across and just kind of almost for my own reassurance. I was just like, he's 72 years old. We just kept saying that. And I think at one point I was texting you because you're in a different part of the venue, and I just sent you a text. He's 72 years old. It's like this, kind of keep pinching myself. Just
I mean, look, you know, he's obviously showing his age to a certain extent. He's sort of quite slow around the stage and whatnot, but he just, I don't know, because he's not a Bruce Dickinson, is he? He's not a tear around the stage like a fucking lunatic and all that. Like, he is a stalker and things, but I don't know. It just feels like he'll go on for donkey's years yet.
It sounds like he can. I just thought, like, so this, what did you think of the set list?
Set list for me was great. I just great to hear things. Obviously, really happy to hear Turbo Lover, because there was a couple of songs on there that they were mixing up in the set list, and that was one of them that may or may not have been in there. So I was really happy to hear that. Love Bites, I thought sounded fucking.
Yeah, we're glad they played Turbo Lover, because that's Padre's favourite Judas Priest song.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, off the back of that, I will now henceforth be known as Turbo Tregenza, not Joey anymore. So if you can relate me to that would be good.
Yeah, that's it. It's set list was. I mean, this is the thing. When I saw them nearly 20 years ago on the Angel tour, I didn't really know them that well. It was just an opportunity to see a classic band who come back in Hammersmith. It's just a handful of albums I knew, but at this point I know it all. So it's, you know, it's great. I can go yes. Oh, this one. Oh, I wasn't expecting this one, etc., etc. And you know, so I wasn't expecting Sinner. Really wasn't.
No, that's fair.
You know, to get, I think even Green Alicia. I don't know if that's a common one, but I just don't know.
I think I think they do usually play it, but it's again, you know, they have mixed it up a little bit. So there was they didn't play Victim of Changes, did they, that night? But they had been playing it a couple of other nights. Didn't play Ripper, but look,
two that surprised me, like you mentioned, Love Bites, right? And that was one of the ones where I had a sneak peek and I'd seen it on the set list, and I was like, oh, do I want to hear that live? And for me, on the night, it was one of the highlights of the set.
Yes,
it sounded incredible. I mean, the venom in his delivery, you know, was incredible. And the other one they played, which I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did, was Saints in Hell.
Yeah,
I just thought that was a real, like a really strong kind of centerpiece almost in the set. And bearing in mind when we did the Judas Priest episode, you know, we talked about you know, stained class and kind of it suffering from a bit of, you know, dull production, and it wasn't really one of the albums that was, I think, for any of us, one of the highlight for us. No. But hearing those tracks live, you know, you realize what powerful songs they are.
Yeah, it all comes to life, doesn't it? And all you know, 40 odd years later, it's, you know, it's still sounding great. Yeah, look, we should talk about Tipton. I think having him back for a couple of songs, I think that was really cool. He doesn't look well, no doubt about that. But look, fair play to him getting up and playing a couple of songs. It's, you know, it's clearly still a love there in there that, you know, it's always going to be the case.
Yeah, and it's all done in a really respectful way as well. I think it's done with genuine love. You know, it's not like they're just kind of wheeling him out for a cheer. I think it just feels like it's a very respectful move.
Yeah, completely.
And I have to give a shout out actually to Richie Faulkner, who I think, do you know what, I was thinking about him after the show, and it's like, do you know what, fair play to him. He's one, you know, is an incredible addition to the band. But I was kind of thinking, do you know what, it's not an easy task. He's come in and you know, he's really added to the band's legacy. You know, it's not like the band are any worse for having him there. He's sort of, obviously he's worked with Glenn Tipton for a while, and as Glenn is kind of fading away a bit, he's really kind of taken things on in the spirit of Judas Priest, and he's kind of carrying things forward, keeping things strong. But you never feel like, you know, he's taking it off somewhere else or doing something that's wild, you know, that's kind of wildly out of place or we're not used to. You know, I think credit where it's due. A lot of why and how we're enjoying Judas Priest in 2024 is down to him.
Yeah, Yeah, completely. Just breathes a bit of new life into the whole thing, doesn't he? He fits. You
Yeah.
know, he just looks like a part of Judas Priest, so it all works. What did you both think of the new songs live? You know, opening with Panic Attack was a great move. That sounded killer. That did.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only one that didn't I wasn't sure about was the title track. And I don't know if it was the sound, but I couldn't quite grasp it.
Good old Wembley sound. I mean, the sound. To be fair, the sound wasn't bad. It was all clear enough. But there is that thing with arenas in there that some intricacies do get lost a little bit, don't they? So
Yeah.
And it's a fast track, you know, it's a fast. There's lots going on. There's lots of movement there. I'm not saying it sounded shit by any means, but I remember, you know, given how powerful Panic Attack sounded, that one I just thought got kind of lost in the echoes of Wembley Arena. The one that actually I enjoyed a lot was Crown of Horns.
yeah,
That has been a real grower for me. When it came out, when the single came out, I sort of wrote it off as a bit of a, okay, it's a bit Route One, it's a bit of just a, you know, an anthemic rocker, but it's really grown on me. And to the point where coming into that gig, because that's another one they have played and they haven't played, I was like, I hope they play it, hope they play it, you know, and they did, and it sounded fantastic.
That's a proper anthem. I think, you know, that needed a big arena to do that justice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what's you know, where they go from here with it. Whether cause there's a couple of other songs would like to have heard them play, but you know, I was surprised there was only 3 songs because you think they're going to be quite proud of that album. I thought they would have done 4 or 5 maybe, but you know,
It's when you've got the back catalogue like theirs, and
yeah, trying to keep everybody happy.
That's it, and you know, do a song from it nearly every album over a certain period. I mean, I don't think they played anything off the previous comeback albums, did they?
They you had Sword of Damocles, didn't you? But that was that was it. Yeah, that was it.
I've been chopping in some stuff from Firepower, but again, it's been a bit of a B sort of thing. Sometimes they do, sometimes they, but I love that. You know, it's good to have that sense of, are we going to get this tonight? You know, a lot of bands of their size would just stick to like one set list throughout the tour.
Yeah. Well, like Maiden, you know, the Maiden set list is always an occasion, isn't it? The first show of the tour, it's like, right, well, what's the set list going to be? And you know that's what it's going to be every night. So, but then Maiden's is so choreographed, and everything is so intricate, and everything's got its place that is always going to be, you know, a rigid set list. So, you know, but look, yes, I'm the same as Ant. Last time I saw Priest was the Angel of Retribution tour, so seeing them again, best part of 20 years later, was really fucking cool. And I agree, it felt like quite a special gig, really did. So yeah, money well spent. And yeah, Saxon were good as well. Like I said before, I'm always a bit iffy with Saxon, but yeah.
I'm surprised. They said they've never played Wembley Arena before. That's surprising.
Yeah, that was a weird one, wasn't it? They turned up to support Reggie Blackmore, didn't they? And he told them they were told to go away.
I don't like you.
Richie Blackmore.
Well, you know what? You can 100% see that being true as well. So
yeah.
But yeah, right. Okay. Anyway, let's move on and talk about a couple of albums, shall we? Should we start off with a bit of Gallic Flair? One of the Voice of Reason's favorites for the month. Ecclesia, is that how you pronounce it?
I think so. I don't know if Christians want to have a go at me, they can, but
Ecclesia Militans or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I've pretty much discovered this over last Easter weekend. So, you know,
praise the Lord.
Some sort of a fate there. Yeah. Again, it's just one of the things that I gave a go after looking at the lists. Album cover art took my fancy. Looks like an old, you know, medieval religious painting. Yeah. I was pretty surprised. It wasn't what I was expecting. I think Ghost meets Candlemass, I think, if I'm going to really keep it simple.
So you get Ghost meets Candlemass. I was thinking Sabotage and Blind Guardian wrestling in a big vat of French onion soup.
See, I thought
I'd pay to see that.
There's a little bit. I thought there was a little bit of Powerwolf in there. So
yeah, a bit of that as well. Yeah, can hear that.
Yeah, it's theatrical. I think they wear robes and masks as well, and there's little religious things in between. So there's definitely riffing on the sort of occult theatre thing that goes popularised. But it's big. It's fucking big.
Yeah.
You know, there is a bit of a cyber sound periphery as well, I think. But there's some choruses there, big choruses,
which we always like.
Which we like.
It's a chorus.
And I think here and there is a bit of a Gajero influence, I think, in how they approach things.
Oh, sacre bleu.
Which, you know, I mean, maybe that's an easy comparison to make with the nationality, but I did pick it up. Yeah, I think this was quite melodic, quite heavy, quite fresh sounding, but doomy enough to not be too, I suppose, saccharine in the accessibility. And I hadn't seen a great deal of people sort of talking about it before.
No, slip through, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I've definitely one I've enjoyed actually.
Yeah, for me, it took one play. Just to kind of try and acclimatize myself to it, because there's so much going on. On the first listen, I wasn't sure. I was thinking, I'm not sure where it's going. It seemed to take, like, stylistically a few turns. You know, I was getting a lot of sorcerer. They reminded me of like a kind of livelier sorcerer, which that was the hook for me. That's like by the time I'd settled on that, I was like, okay, right, keep listening. The second play, it all just felt like it had settled down in my mind, and I knew what to expect. And like you said, I really enjoyed it. Some real anthemic songs on there. I was getting Halloween as well.
There's all of that in there. There's loads of that going on. All that sort of classic, slightly progressive, classic heavy metal, but not quite prog, if you know what I mean. It's a bit of power metal, there's an awful lot going on in the mix.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes that can be a real bad. That can just end up sounding like shit. And to be fair, they get it right. There's like you said, there's enough choruses, enough songs to make it work.
Yeah, I wasn't. It won me over. I'll say that much. The first playthrough, I just wasn't sure. I couldn't quite grasp where it was going, and it seemed to sort of change strategy from song to song. Which is a really weird thing, but ultimately, once you get used to that and you find your feet with it, it makes for a really interesting listen. So, you know, second playthrough was a completely different experience for me.
That's always good, though, isn't it? When you go back to something and it sounds different.
Yeah, no, I was fully on board by that point. You know, I'd play it again. I want to hear more. I'm led to believe. I was because I never heard of them, right? So I was reading. You know, did a little bit of homework just to try and find out a bit more. And I'm led to believe they're kind of moving away from what was, I understand, a more Candlemass kind of traditional doom thing. So these more progressive influences and the power metal thing, I think is a fairly new direction.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll see then. Watch this space.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Right. Carrying on the sort of occultist theme then, but much more Welsh than French. Goat Major released Ritual, which is their debut album, came out on Ripple Music at the start of the month. I was really looking forward to this when I heard the single a couple of months back.
Yeah,
the single was really good. Welsh 3-piece doom band, proper just classic Sabbathy, dirty occultist doom, which we do love. And yeah, look, they fucking nailed it. And I like the fact these are all guys around about our kind of age, like mid-40s, and you know, it's
kids.
Definitely not kids.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah, and it's a really fucking good album. It's just packed full of riffs. It's got great, and it's got that occulty kind of sound that we do love.
It's got Desert Fest written all over it.
Actually, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing them at Desert Fest.
There are no there are no surprises. Like if you're into bands like Electric Wizard, and they reminded me a lot actually of Witch, the American, like Jay Mascis's other band, Witch, who were kind of first ones out.
You keep talking about that, and I still haven't listened to it.
So man, check them out. They like that. For me, they were one of the bands that were first out the gates with this whole kind of retro occult sort of revival, I suppose. But they were doing it a long time ago, really. But anyway, there were shades of that in there. I love the production. I think it's got that warm, fuzzy, occult rock sound, but there's bite there as well, and it actually sounds really big.
Yeah.
Which is always a good thing, especially with a three-piece. You love to see that. I
always love a three-piece.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Like I said, looking forward to seeing them at Desert Fest, and we're hoping to get them on for a bit of a chat as well, because I think it's like I say, I mentioned the fact that they're guys that are more sort of our age, and we're all getting old, so we're familiar with that, which these days seems quite unusual. We get a lot of kids starting young bands and whatnot, but the guys that kind of age, it's it makes a nice change. So
I think I heard it was a lockdown thing, so
it was yeah, that's where it all kind of kicked off.
So I think a lot of people just found ways to use that time, and I wonder how many bands were started in lockdown, or projects that had been sitting on the sidelines. All of a sudden, that became the right time just to fire them up and get them going.
Like if the whole lockdown thing gave us anything, if it gives us stuff like this, then happy days. We're all a winner, aren't we?
And shout out to the album art as well. What a great album cover!
Really cool, really fucking cool.
Any album cover that was begging to be put on a t-shirt, I go the whole hog for that. It's like, give me the 12-inch, give me the t-shirt. It's such a great image.
Yeah, I would definitely need to pick up the vinyl. Get around to that when there's a UK distro for it. It's only straight from Ripple Music at the minute, I think. So unfortunately, that means postage costs through the roof. So once it drops in the UK, I'll definitely pick that up. But yeah, if you're going to Desert Fest, I think they're opening the Black Heart on Sunday, I think. But obviously double check the lineup, but they'll definitely be one to check out. They're going to sound absolute filth live. And in the Black Heart, your ears will probably bleed as well. So, anybody who's not a metal fan would perish the thought. But for the rest of us, happy days. Bean, you went to the Napalm Death extravaganza.
Yeah. Yes.
With Primitive Man and Wormrot and Pig Destroyer, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Yeah, that was another. I mean, God, we've been spoiled for gigs. I'll say that much. In March, really, really strong night. And right, Napalm Death. I've never been to a bad Napalm Death gig. Fair. I mean, always bring it. And I know you've talked about it on here in the past. Even when Barney was in a cast.
Yeah.
There's footage of him online just being Barney Greenway from a chair. But anyway, thankfully, on that night, at the Brixton Electric, he was up and healed and running about as he does. And Shane Embry played as well, which was cool because he's been in and out of the band recently. I think he's been sitting out a few legs of the tour. So, a bit like seeing Glenn Tipton on stage with Priest, seeing Embry on stage, you kind of get that feel. It's like, right, yeah, the gang's back together. Okay, this is very cool. They nailed it. All of the bands nailed it, and Barney did a bit of a spiel from the stage and was just talking about how his hopes to make this an annual event. So he talked about it was no accident that all those bands played together.
So it's like a curated lineup then, if
so it's like think of it like a little mini festival, I suppose. They've thought hard about who they want to play with and who they want to bring in for that sort of event, and they did, and kind of nobody phoned it in. I mean, all of those bands, I love. I've spent a lot of time listening to. So to see them all in the same room, just absolutely like flooring it over the course of a few hours was a treat.
I think we need to talk about that because I was going to go, but there was a lot on in March, and I just thought, I'll skip this one. But you look at that lineup, and we don't get tours like this very often in the UK anymore, where you get like a proper package.
No.
So you've got Napalm Death, you've got Primitive Man, who I've never seen and would like to have seen. Don't play live in the UK that often.
No.
Pig Destroyer, another one, don't play live here that often. And if they do, it's normally at somewhere like a Damnation or something like that. And then obviously Wormrot as well, who are a pretty unusual band to say the least. So it is a really interesting package. That.
Yeah, it reminds me of, here we go, sounding like an old man back in the day. I just think tours were thought about a bit more than they are now. Like here, an example being, so I bit the bullet and I got tickets for me and the family to go and see Pearl Jam in the summer, and really looking forward to it. But you look at the rest of the bands on the bill, and I think it's like Richard
Dog shit.
Ashcroft or someone like that, and um, I don't know. I just think it's an opportunity to put together a bill, where everyone has a day listening to kind of, you have a grunge day out. I mean, think back to Black Sabbath in Hyde Park, and that lineup. You had Soundgarden, you had Faith No More, you had Motorhead.
Yeah.
It was a real day out for anyone that's into that sort of thing. Now, like, I know Pearl Jam aren't a metal band, but you could still turn up the grunge a little bit, and just get some.
It's a very odd choice because Richard Ashcroft. I mean, no disrespect to him. I there's some Verve tracks I absolutely bloody love, but his fan base is significantly different to Pearl Jam's.
Yeah,
it is a very you can imagine it's the '90s indie crowd. The Scallies and the sort of Rebos.
it is an odd choice. You're right. It is a very odd choice.
Yeah. So, without sort of dwelling on that too much, but to stack that up against something like this, the Napalm Death tour, where they really have thought about who they're gonna package themselves with. And actually, I think they're really good at that anyway. I'm just thinking back to times I've seen Napalm Death in the past, paired up with like Power Trip, Bruguera, obviously,
yeah.
Shane doing the double there.
Well, last year they took out Siberian Meat Grinder, didn't they? They had there was a couple of others. It was another sort of 3 or 4 band package. So yeah, look, I hope they do carry on doing it because it's a great idea.
Yeah. So anyway, so it was a fucking fantastic night, that one. Really, really strong. Brilliant.
Yeah, like you say, you can always rely on Napalm Death. You know what you're going to get. So look, if they do it again next year, I'll pull my finger out and attend.
Yeah. Although I'll tell you, here's a horror story though. I'll tell you one thing. If you're buying drinks in the electric Brixton, just check. They sell them in these like plastic, reusable cups, like the sort of solid type. Anyway, just check your beer before you take a gulp, because I was happily drinking a beer, watching Worm Rot, and kind of glanced down, got to the end. I'm sort of assessing whether it's time to go and refill, and there's a big glob of old chewing gum in the bottom of the glass.
Oh God.
So it's clearly just had a cursory rinse before they've just put them all out to use them again. And it was just like, oh my God.
And all that for what? It's close to £8 a pint in there, I think, isn't it? It's expensive venue, isn't it?
Minty beer. Yeah. So just a cautionary tale. Just keep an eye on the bottom of your glass.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. I remember that. Mind you, I've only ever been there once. That was Carcass, and didn't buy a beer because it's just stupid prices. So it's bad enough being in Brixton as it is.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Bruce? Because that came out on the 1st of fucking March, and we haven't had a chance to really talk about this yet. So the Mandrake Project came out, Bruce's first solo album since Tyranny of Souls. That's what it was called, wasn't
it? Yeah.
Which was best part of 20 years ago.
That surprised me when that was talked about. I thought, really? Has it really been that long since Bruce had put out a solo album?
Well, he's probably been a little bit busy.
I think because we know, obviously with the Iron Maiden getting back together, and I'm saying getting back together 25 years ago. But he, I know they've not released albums every 2 years, but what with the touring and him doing all the pilot stuff,
exactly.
It's just a case of time, isn't it? Really, and I think he started doing the solo stuff because he needed a bit of an out, and it's not really surprising that Maiden's poorest stuff was when he was doing that. Those first 10 years.
Focus had shifted, hadn't it?
Exactly. But of course, Iron Maiden since he came back have been absolutely bloody brilliant. So it's like there's no need to do solo stuff. Really.
No, but this feels like it's something he wanted to do, and it's. I mean, we said when we'll talk about the signing as well in a minute, but when we were discussing the album that day, it feels like all his character has just come out in this album that you haven't heard from Bruce for many, many years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fun. It's a fun album. This album to me sounds like Bruce, the music fan. You know, this is Bruce who loves Deep Purple. This is Bruce who loves Jethro Tull. You know, and all those classic rock bands. You know,
Bruce
I,
Dickinson the musical. I want to see that.
yeah, yeah, bloody hell. Well, actually, there's a few moments like in the second half of the album that it kind of goes into that territory. You know, some of
Yeah,
his
in far off.
and so you know maybe it'll happen. As you said, you know, he's been busy. In fact, actually, busy is if there's one word that dovetails really nicely into Bruce Dickinson's career, it's just busy.
Busy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But here we are. We finally got the Mandrake project. I liked it. I really enjoyed it from the. I like the singles. You know, a bit like Goat Major. The singles came out, and I was on board from there. So it was just you know, a nice level of anticipation waiting for the album.
Right.
Yeah.
And
This is
you pick you picked this up recently. We haven't really talked about it yet, so I'm curious
No.
to know what you actually think of it.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it straight away for some reason. That's been me this month, but yeah, got around to it. What first listen, good. Yeah, you know, old school rock. Yeah, fine. That's what we expect from Bruce. But it's that second listen. It really hit me. Like really hit me how great an album this really is. You know, the layers, the grasp of melody, the anthemic aspects. It's a very organic record,
Yeah,
but it's you know, it shows how I think the breadth of how Dickinson approaches things. And you know, I've said before, I love Skunkworks.
You
I
have.
know that album, you know, has had its critics in the past, but you know, he moved back on, you know, with Accident of Birth a year later back into the sort of heavy metal. But I
yeah,
think that was a great album, and it deserved a lot more love. And you know, it sounded, you know, for me, that was an honest, decent, you know, worth it album. So when you know when I'm listening to this and he drops Resurrection Man,
Yeah, we need to talk about
you
that
know,
song. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually thinking, wow, this is something else. This is one of the most original things I've heard in metal or rock for ages. But it's still familiar though. That's the thing. It's so unexpected. You know, most of it verse wise, it sounds like something you'd expect from Echo and the Bunnymen or New Order in the 80s. The way that the acoustic guitar sort of rumbles along in a sort of very indie rock manner. But then you've got this sort of chorus and bridge part, which feels like prime stoner metal.
Well,
You know,
it's the point where it goes from, like you say, that sort of melancholy kind of thing, and then this Iommi riff just kicks in at 2.5 minutes roughly. It's like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, that whole song just sums it up for me. The whole album, it's you know,
Completely agree with that. Yeah,
it's excuse me, it's wonderful. So yeah,
yeah, absolutely fair play to him. I just
Yeah,
love the fact he's now allowed to just go, I'm Bruce Dickinson and this is what I do.
yes, yeah. Now, just to go back, that point you made about Skunkworks. So obviously he's got a tour coming up off the back of the album, and all the early indications were, you know, he was pulling songs from throughout his career, but he wasn't planning to play anything from Skunkworks. I heard recently that his band have basically sort of said, "Well, why not? Like, we love that album. Why can't we do some stuff from there?" So, you know, watch this space because you might find some of those tracks, um, you know, coming back into well, not back in, but coming into the live set when he goes out, which will be a treat.
I don't really want to talk about it because I'm not seeing him. So
yeah,
fuck
normal.
you.
So yeah,
So the tickets went on sale at a point where I was like, I just don't have 50 odd quid to spare to buy a fucking ticket. It's just
Look, listen, keep an eye out because if you can get through the door, you know, it's going to be another great gig. I mean, it's Bruce Dickinson, small venue.
yeah, absolutely. Of course it is.
And I agree.
He has already said this is like the first leg, and he will be doing another run. You know, he's going to carry on. So I'm sure I'll get another opportunity. But I've always wanted to see his solo stuff live. I've never seen him, so
Yeah.
it would be great. But I'm sure I'll get the chance.
Yeah. Anyway, I agree. I agree with Ant. I think it's a really special album. I do feel sorry that Judas Priest released Invincible Shield the week after.
Week after, yeah.
Swept it away. You got one Metal Legend comes out, this album we've all been waiting for. And it's like, fuck, it's great, you know, and we're all enjoying the fact that Bruce is having fun and it sounds lively, and it's, you know, he's using all the ideas that he's not allowed to use in Iron Maiden because, you know, that's such a rigid thing. And then Judas Priest kind of come out and just sweep it away with the you know, with this cascade of Invisible Shield. So it took me a while to kind of come back and revisit it. But it's a great album. Yeah,
It is a properly.
I'd say it's probably his least like it's not a metal album. You know,
it's not. It's an old school hard rock album.
Hard rock, you know, it's like really warm guitar tones. It sounds very analog. It sounds very recorded to tape. Interestingly, the internet seems to be really Marmite on it. A lot of people have criticized it.
Fuck them. What are they?
Well, exactly. Fuck them. You know, fuck you.
What does the internet know? Fuck the internet.
You know, saying he sounds spent, his voice isn't up to scratch.
Oh, fuck off!
I'm listening to the record and thinking, what the fuck? Where are you getting that from?
You've got to make a concession anyway for people, you know, of that age. It's just lower your expectations.
Not to mention throat cancer.
Yeah, it's absolutely, at the very least, it's fine for that album, but it's not. It's good. So
it's great. I think he sounds phenomenal. Like I'm listening.
We need to remember, people are fucking idiots.
Yes, they are. Yes, they absolutely are.
Doesn't get enough.
They have been,
and at very least, it's disrespectful. So, you know, keep your fucking opinions to yourselves. But
and talking about respect, we got to pay our respects to the man himself.
That's what I was just about to say. So yeah, on the day of release, wasn't it? We queued up in the pissing down rain outside HMV on Oxford Street. It was cold. It was wet. There wasn't. Couldn't buy beer anywhere, which really pissed me off. Walking up and down the street trying to find a shop to buy beer, and there was fuck all. So yeah, that bit wasn't great, but it was well worth it, wasn't it?
Of course it was. Got to shake hands with the man himself, you know, and I did feel for him. He looked a bit fatigued, I think, kind of pressing the flesh and smiling for photos and shaking hands for. I mean, he must have done about 3 hours of that, I guess, by the time we'd all passed.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. Don't forget he did the Cardiff one at midnight that night, and obviously he travelled through the night, probably only got a little bit of kip during the day, and then did that in the evening, and then he was off to Sheffield or Manchester or Birmingham, somewhere like that, the next day.
Yeah. So he's really flying through the towns and cities, you know, doing this thing. But it was a treat for me just to shake him by the hand and say thank you. That's all it needed, wasn't it?
You were never going to get a chance to have a deep conversation with him, but it was nice, just like you said, just to thank you for the music, and it's a great album, and move on, and never wash your hand. So, you know.
Yeah, it's starting to get pitchy now.
Yeah, it's
his words to me were he hopes the album stands up to repeated listens, so we can all be the judge of that.
Yeah, it will. And Frank Skinner was there, so you know.
Yes, and the next day I went to see Judas Priest doing a Q&A, and Frank Skinner was there as well.
That's fucking brilliant. I'm assuming that was with his grandkids. Do you reckon? Looking at the age of the kids that were with him, I would say.
I'd reckon so. But you know,
apologies, Frank, if I'm wrong. Not that you're listening, obviously, but you never know. So yeah, look, it was a good day. It was a good day. It's a nice bit of vinyl as well. It's a nice package, double blue vinyl, and you know.
Now on that point, so one thing I'd say, which is a little. Like disappointing isn't the right word, but I don't know. I felt there was going to be a bit more Mandrake project-ness to follow, you know, and it feels like there's this big kind of build up with the Mandrake project. It's all this hush hush. What is the Mandrake project? You know, that kind of thing. On release day, it was like, and it's just an album. There you go. Yeah. There's a comic book as well. I suppose it remains to be seen how that develops, but
it might come to life in the live arena, I suppose.
Maybe that. But I have consciously thought, I thought the Mandrake project was going to feel bigger than it has done after the event. But you know, that's fine. That's a small thing. The music speaks for itself, really. That's enough for me. There's plenty to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay. Let's move on. Should we go Swedish? Because you know we do love a bit of Swedish.
That sounds painful.
well, you know, there's no meatballs involved or anything like that, but Necrophobic in the Twilight Grey. This is one that's certainly caught me by surprise because I've never listened to this band before, despite knowing who they are and whatnot, but I've never listened to them. But I listened to it once, thought, yeah, this is good. And you mentioned it and said how much you liked it. And I went back and listened to it again and again and again and again and again. And I've listened to it God knows how many times. What a fucking belter this is.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I'd never heard this band before, never come across them. So completely new to me, even though they've been knocking around for many years. You know, it's extreme metal because, you know, there's a bit of black, there's a bit of death, there's a bit of thrash, there's all sorts there. But it's just so much melody there.
Huge.
That's what I like. You know me. I like my melody. I need that. I wouldn't say there's choruses or anthemic, but there is accessibility in that sort of regard. But it goes through all the twists and turns. It's, you know, lots of ups and downs, lots of different scope.
Lots of galloping.
Yeah, that's it.
We like a gallop. We like a gallop in the metal world.
I do love a gallop.
Yeah, it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's just about right. It's just a really nicely balanced extreme metal album. You know, and maybe it's a wrong reaction for me to go, that was nice. I like that. But that's kind of how I felt, and you know, that's good.
But it's just hooky as fuck, isn't it? Like you say, there's no like distinct big kind of choruses or anything like that, but almost every song has a hook.
Yeah,
and this kind of music shouldn't be that hooky.
And there's a rawness there. There's enough rawness that you need from that back kind.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't have like a massive production, does it? It's relatively understated for that, but with everything going on, it still sounds big. It sounds anthemic. It's, you know, all of that. I think it's fucking great. It's made me go back and listen to earlier albums as well.
Well, I just want to come in on that point about it being really hooky because this is one I'm catching up with. Like I haven't been listening to it. I hadn't picked up on it. I know you guys were kind of really enthusiastic about it, and I just set it to one side for a while. So you know, I've only had a couple of plays with it, but one thing I will say is every time I kind of thought, yeah, like this is cool. It's got like it's standard fare. Anytime I was just about to cross the threshold of like, yeah, it's good, but you know, I've heard it all before, they would just shift. They would just pull in like a time change or some kind of melody on the guitar or something would happen. And it just pricked my ears up again. And I'd just be like, oh, right. Okay. Oh, fucking hell. Okay. Yeah. So they're not just, you know, plowing a certain furrow. They're moving about, they're bringing in different ideas. And, you know, it feels like over the whole album, it's just a really satisfying listen.
Yeah, it's satisfying. That's a really good shout. Is it kind of, as a metal fan, it digs into that psyche that sometimes you just want, you know, something quite simple that really kind of hits home, and there's something the Swedes do really well anyway, because you know, as we all know, when it comes to, you know, injecting melody into extreme music, not many do it better than the Swedes. But this is just one of those albums that you can't help but be drawn into it. So fair play to them. 30 odd years into a career, you know, I want to go back through, and I'm sure the very earlier stuff is a lot more raw. Maybe I don't know, but what I've been listening to so far, this is what they do, and it sounds fucking great. So yeah,
like I said, I'm playing catch up, but it's not. You know, it's still very much on the agenda. So it's you know, I'm going to keep listening.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think I still got more to go with it, to be fair. So, because this is, you know, it's a relatively long album, but you know, if ever I feel like I'm going to be going into battle anytime soon, it's the kind of thing I'll listen to beforehand. So, and that in the metal world is a badge of honor. So, yeah, we'll take that. But we'll just touch on a couple of other albums just quickly. I want to touch on Wheel of Illusion by the QUILL, another Swedish band. This is just pure Sabbath worship.
Oh,
don't
man,
need much more than that. But
first track is like Children of the Grave, basically.
Yeah. It's not, look, it's not subtle. But then look, the QUILL have been around. Well, I didn't realize this is their 11th album. They've been around since the early 90s. Yeah. And it is very Sabbathy. It's Swedish doom. There's sort of touches of Candlemass and all that kind of thing. But again, like that Necrophobic album, it's old school heavy metal, and it's full of fucking hooks and great catchy choruses. And sometimes that's all you need. Elephant Head is one of my favorite songs of the year so far.
Right, there you go.
You know, it's proper catchy, and it has got a brilliant video as well. Absolutely brilliant. It's like a Monty Python animation. It's fucking brilliant. So I
had never heard of the Quill. I knew nothing about
No,
it.
me neither. No.
So this album, and again, it's another one that I've just kind of, I've only started listening to it over the last couple of days, and kind of a bit like Ecclesia, it won me over. That first track, yeah, it's cut from the same like cookie cutter as Children of the Grave, right?
Yeah.
So I'm listening to it thinking, okay, it sounds Sabbathy, but it's a bit too close. It reminded me of like the way Orchid kind of approached their songwriting, where they, you know, it's a little bit. Now I like Orchid, I do, but it's a little bit too Sabbathy. But track 2 and beyond, they start pulling in some other influences. So I was hearing a lot of Deep Purple in there as well.
Massive Deep Purple influence.
Bring them up again. And ultimately I was thinking, do you know what? This is going to appeal to anyone who's a fan of Spiritual Beggars. That's the I kind of settled on that as like, right, that's the ballpark that they're in. It's just kind of this big classic rock, lots of energy, metallic influences coming in, but ultimately it's a big fun rock record. And with a really slick delivery.
You had a chance to listen to it?
I have, yeah. I mean, it's solid. I mean, you know, I'm not the sort of biggest Sabbath fan, so it's not necessarily my thing. But
God, imagine saying that on a metal podcast.
I know. No, I like Sabbath.
They're all right. Yeah.
I'm an 80s metal boy. But no, I mean, I echo what you said with Elephant Head. That it really,
great song.
really out. Yeah,
so fucking catchy. So look, I'm going to be digging back into more of their stuff. I've listened to a couple of albums, and it's weird. Like I've gone back like 3 albums, and the previous album is a lot more Candlemassy, and then the album before that is more like Wheel of Illusion. So it's all, I don't know if they've got if there's a bit of a pattern to it, but they seem to kind of dip in and out of a much more doomy sound or a more catchy, classic rocky kind of sound. So I'm sort of looking forward to going back to some of the earlier stuff as well and finding out, you know, what it's all about. So just quickly, Coffin Storm, Arcana Rising. We reviewed this a couple of weeks ago. We fucking love it. And what do you think of it? Because I haven't got your opinion on it yet.
I haven't listened to it yet.
All right, okay, we'll leave that there. But you know, leave your preconceptions at the door.
This is it. I think it sounds like an album I need to basically sit down with and focus on.
Yeah, you need double blue denim. You'll need a beer, and you'll need to warm your neck up, because that's basically what it comes down to.
Right,
so,
okay.
I'd almost say the opposite. It's like, don't focus on it, just turn it up and just kind of.
Well, yeah.
Well, you said double denim. Is there a Shakin' Stevens cover on it?
Well, you know what? I wouldn't have been surprised.
What I love about this album, apart from the album, is just how warmly received it's been.
It has been, hasn't it? Yeah, it's been really warm.
Loads of enthusiasm for it. So it's clearly done what it needed to do.
Well, it's bonkers. It's eccentric. So, you know, and that's like we said a couple of weeks ago. That's exactly what we love about it. So, so we'll come back to this one when you've had a chance to listen to it, because it is a bit Marmite. You know, you're either going to love it or you're going to think this is just fucking daft. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Slime Lord. Right, Bean, do you want to have a go? Do you want to have a go at saying the title? Because I don't know what it is.
Can I try Deomycosis?
Oh, right, fuck off.
Relinquished.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget the relinquished. It's it refers to a fungal infection.
Of course. I mean, of course.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I did a bit of homework because, you know, science, isn't it? Well, everything I learned about science, I learned from metal. So fuck you, science teachers. Yeah, I think I've said that right. This one I really, really, really like this album. It is mad. It will rot your brain.
It's definitely mad, yeah.
You know, and heavy metal is kind of one of the only genres where you can say something like it'll rot your brain and you mean it as a complete compliment. But yeah,
no, you can say that about certain comics as well.
Good. I want to read them
while listening to Slime Lord.
while listening to Slime Lord. So yeah, Slime Lord are a band. I first came across them at the Black Heart, actually, to mention that again. They were doing a celebration of British death metal, so this kind of new wave of British death metal. And actually that night, so Vacuous played, Celestial Sanctuary played. I think Slime Lord headlined. Um, I might have that wrong, but if they didn't headline, they clearly made that much of an impression that I think of them as the headliner that night. But anyway, um, so I checked them out from there, and they've been putting out releases on Dry Cough, which is a great label. And they do a lot of distro for $20 spin. And actually, for this album, Slime Lord have been picked up by $20 spin, who are, you know, a label that I just love. And what they do really well is curate like ridiculous bands that just shouldn't appeal to anyone, but they've got this knack of picking the ones that just have something compelling about them, that just make for really fun and interesting listen. And this new Slime Lord record is no exception. It's not an easy listen, and I'm going to use a word that might be considered a bit of a swear on this podcast. But I hear this in the same way that I hear a lot of free jazz.
Yeah, look, I'm no jazz fan, but 100% there is just jazz running all the way through this.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of, it just takes it goes here, it goes there. There's bits where you just can't quite work out what's going on, which sounds shit, you know. But somehow through it all, there's just this really compelling energy that just draws you in. I guess like one of the things that gets talked about on this podcast a lot is the power of a good chorus and good songwriting, and how that kind of elevates certain bands above others, maybe. And I kind of, just to add to that, I don't think a band necessarily has to have like clear sort of direction with their songwriting, or sort of those big anthemic choruses. I think the key is about having something compelling. That's the word for me. So it can be, there's a lot of music I listen to that is just, you know, it's noise, as your grandparents might sort of define it. But there's something about it. They captured the energy of the performance, and that's what this album has running through it. It makes you feel something. That something is disgusting, but it takes you to a place. And I think, you know, I give it all the credit in the world for that. It, you know, you and I've said this before, you just want to take a shower after you've listened to it. But I mean that in the best possible way. So whatever they're doing, they're doing it well. And yeah, I fully recommend this.
Yeah, it's not usually the kind of type of death metal that I would like either, which that's making even more surprising. I bought the vinyl as well. I liked it that much, and I've put the vinyl on once and listened to it. I listened to it really fucking loud as well when there was no one else in the house, and it is just a complete mind fuck.
Yeah, I did that. Where was I? I think I might have even been coming to for drinks with you, but I was getting ready to go out and I had it on loud, and I just started feeling really kind of paranoid and weird. It just fills the room with this atmosphere of kind of dread and disgust. It's like watching a really good horror film, or a really excruciating thriller or something like that. There's just some kind of gnarly energy contained in it, which makes it a winner for me. So.
And they're British, so that's always a big thing for us. It's just another great British album. Right, okay. Let's move on quickly. A couple more albums that we'll touch on. Hands of Goro, self-titled debut. This is a side project for members of Spirit Adrift and Slough Feg and whatnot. Come completely kind of out of nowhere. Didn't know anything about it. Gave it a listen based on a K-Man on Twitter. And it's one of my favorite albums of the year so far. For anybody who hasn't listened to it, it is a proper curveball. So I can hear everything from sort of 70s proto metal. There's 80s thrash in there. There's 80s classic metal. There's New Wobham in there. Thin Lizzy, Metallica, Sabbath, Zeppelin. Yeah, there's one song, end to end, sounds like Join the Army era Suicidal Tendencies, you know, and then the next one will be fucking full on Motorhead rock and roll, like 21st Century Plague. It's mad.
I
It's
tell you, two,
absolutely
two
mad, but
thoughts I had.
it really works.
Two thoughts I had listening to this one. Well, first was it sounds like the sort of band where I don't know, you'll be in a metal bar and a band starts playing and it's like, oh, who are these guys? You know, and someone says, kind of looks at the poster and it's like, oh, you know, have you ever heard of them? It's like, no, I've never heard of them. Do you know them? No, I don't know them. And they'll start to play and you'll be drinking. And as the set progresses, you just realize that they're fucking good and you just kind of get into it. And by the end of it, you're all just like, fucking yeah, but why have we never heard of these guys? You know, that's how this album plays out. It really, you know, you really warm to it. And like there was a moment about 4 or 5 tracks in where I just found myself thinking they it sounds like Metallica, but where every member is Cliff Burton.
What a great analogy.
So this is interesting because I mean, for me, this just I don't know if I'm just listening in a very simple manner, but it just feels just like a straight up classic New Wobble album.
But it is. That's exactly what it is. But when you break it down into all these little elements, you can hear all these weird influences going on. But yeah, you're right. It is a New Wobble, really early 80s New Wobble album.
Proper, yeah. It's got that raw energy and that hunger and whatnot. I mean, admittedly, I've only listened to it once, but I will be coming back to it. I mean, it's a bit of an odd one actually because I nearly didn't have a go because I think the first track I listened to was the first track of the album, and I actually think that's comparatively weak compared to the rest of the album.
It grows as it goes on.
Yeah, and it just sort of says that, you know, you gotta give an artist a couple of songs at least before you make an opinion. But yeah, there is a lot going on, but there's a lot of energy, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I've listened to it several times. Like I said, a couple of listens, and I've gone back to it again, sort of a couple of weeks later, and that's when you'll start hearing all those other influences coming through because it is weird. But like you said, yeah, the fundamentals of it is a New Wobble album, you know, and you know that's always good. It's like fucking. I suppose the nearest thing I would think is someone like Angel Witch. It's that kind of.
Oh, it's that's
dirtier, more raw end of New Wobble. So so yeah, I can highly recommend that one. DODSRIT, Nocturnal Will. I need to talk about this because again, this is a really strong one for me. I've said this a couple of times. I put out on social media. If Gary Moore did black metal, it would sound like this. Which I know is a really weird thing to say, but that's kind of it's weird. It's quite heavily instrumental. There's not a huge amount of vocals on it. The songs are very long, and a lot of it's quite repetitive. But like I said, I just thought Gary Moore because it's got, you know, like Out in the Fields with Phil Lynott. It's got that sort of sound to it, and it's a really weird one. It's
that sort of
it's just kind of epic and melodic like that, which Gary Moore did really well.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a really odd mix. I listened to the previous album, which is a lot more sort of straight up melodic black metal, but this takes on this has gone a different direction.
This feels like, you know, what if a Norwegian black metal fan was given a classic dad rock CD for Christmas?
And this is what yeah. Well, the guy behind it is Swedish, and the band are Dutch. So it's you know, so it is a bit of a mismatch. I noticed they're playing in London in a couple of weeks actually with Devilmaster. So I might have to get along to that to see if it all works in the live arena as well. But yeah, look, it's bizarre. I've said this several times that black metal albums should not be this melodic. It shouldn't be this catchy. You know, it's like it sounded great in the car. It's like driving music.
Yeah, the thing is, it was inevitable though. I mean, you know, they all made a point of being, no, you know, we're different, we're misanthropic, and we're this and we're that in the early 90s and whatnot. But you know, it's like punk. You know, the musicians grow out. You know, punk. You know, I like punk probably more than black metal, but you get to that point where you think, you know what, I want to write melodic stuff. I want to write interesting stuff. I want to be a bit more grown up. I can't just do the angry, shouty stuff that your nan's always going to hate kind of thing. you crave melody. So it's no different. We're getting all this stuff from black metal, but you know, they're keeping that core guitar sound.
It's evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is plenty of melancholy on here, but it's tinged with kind of hope and just kind of looking forward, and you know, there's an air of positivity about it. And like one of the words I wrote down was one of the words I wrote down while I was listening to it was just triumphant. It just there's this kind of triumphant air to it. And then just to kind of wash away some of these sort of dad rock flavors, just in case anyone thinks it sounds like status quo. It's to me, it sounds like how I want Svalbard to sound. Like I often find myself listening to Svalbard and enjoying it, but this kind of takes it to another place, which to me just feels a bit more sort of kind of panoramic and just bigger.
Yeah, panoramic. That's a great word for it. It's like if you wanted to put a black metal soundtrack to a David Attenborough documentary, this would work. You know, and look, when I first listened to it, I was mowing the lawn. And I think I put it out on Twitter at the time. It just felt like I was mowing the lawn out on the fucking deserted plains of Norway somewhere. It was just.
I was about to ask. So, what animals would you pair it up with?
Oh my god.
I mean, is it the distant sight of kind of elephants coming over the horizon, or is it monkeys shagging?
This is wild deer.
Yeah, wild deer, or something like an elk or something that you see in the mist.
Moose.
You know, up on the hills, a moose, and it just it looks at you and just kind of goes and turns around and walks away. And this would be the soundtrack.
Yeah, if you ever seen some of those mooses, they have
meese.
You know, high up in Canada, they're just fucking huge, and
they're like a house on legs.
Yeah,
you know. So, but yeah, look, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and if time allows, I might have to go to that show just to see if it all works live. So, you know, well, look, that's it for the albums. Let's try and squeeze in all the gigs because we've touched on a couple. Bean, you went to Ugly Kid Joe at the Ballroom last week.
Yeah, I did. Another great one. Do you know what? Like, so this month has been a run of gigs that have felt like the best I've ever seen certain bands. So I felt that about Judas Priest. You know, I've seen Judas Priest. That was the third time I've seen Judas Priest, and the best time I've ever seen Judas Priest. Similarly for Ugly Kid Joe, which I hadn't necessarily planned to go to, but I got a call from Uncle Mike, aka the Professor.
Yeah, Mike.
He had tickets in his pocket, so off we went. And it was a Sunday night, and it was absolutely packed. And again, the third time I've seen them live, always a good live band, but this time they just hit another gear. And I'd say they played a longer set. It was less of a greatest hits set, and I think they really dug into their catalogue a lot, which was great to see because they got, you know, arguably they're a bit, to the outsider, they're kind of known as a bit of a gimmicky band, you know, one hit wonder. And
which is unfair.
Which is unfair because they've got so much great material and they really showcased it at the Electric Ballroom. Loads of material from Menace to Sobriety, which is you know, an underplayed, underrated album, and that all just sounded fantastic. And I got to hear for the first time the 25-second classic that is Heavy Metal, which they closed with. Which I think
closed with it.
Yeah, it was, well, you know, I suppose for all intents and purposes, of course, they closed with Everything About You.
Yeah.
But you know, just as the last notes of that were fading away, there was a quick click and then straight into Heavy Metal just to kind of round it off in a really nice way. So I was just like, do you know what? If I didn't see Ugly Kid Joe again, I'm happy with that. It was a really, really good night, really fun, great atmosphere. Everyone was up for it. Venue was packed. The fans clearly knew the catalogue. As I said, they were nipping in and out of all of their albums, and everyone was kind of matched them track for track. So, you know, it was high energy, really good. Enjoyed it.
They are that band, aren't they? There's always a good vibe around them. I mean, Bloodstock last year, as we talked about, and we went to see them at Shepherd's Bush, didn't we? You know, when they first dropped Rad Wings of Destiny, and just to fucking they just make you feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Interesting point actually about Ugly Kid Joe. So and this, whether or not we see more and more of this happening, I don't know. Let's wait and see. But the version of Ugly Kid Joe that we get in the UK seems to be different to the version that tours the US.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's just Whitfield and Klaus kind of travel to and from. And then over here, we get the rest of the band are kind of, three British guys that they use. I think the drummer is also plays with Terrorvision. You got Chris Catalyst playing guitar as well. These are all English musicians that kind of, on the circuit. And I was interested by that. So I did a bit of digging around on the internet, and the band, like if you go to their Wikipedia page, for example, the band is still listed as like the American musicians. So I think this is something to do with kind of traveling and touring now. Maybe it's more cost effective to kind of have your kind of, your B team over in the, not that any of those musicians are B grade musicians. They're all fucking amazing. But, I think you get what I'm trying to say. You kind of have the two versions, and it's probably cheaper to hire those guys in or get them involved.
It probably just makes it easier to tour. I mean, Devin Townsend does something very similar. He has another band that are based in the UK.
Right.
When he's over here, that's who he tours with. And then he's got a band he has in the US. So
maybe
I fully understand it. Fully understand.
Yeah, maybe more bands do it than we realise.
As long as you can do it and still have chemistry, and it doesn't look like a load of hired hands, then.
Well, that is what I would say about Ugly Kid Joe is it works. Everyone's. It's not. You don't get the feeling it's like two guys and then some session musicians. Everyone's. I guess that's what's interesting. It's like they're as much a part of the band as they ever could be. The energy's there. They're jumping around. They're hitting all the cues. There's a mad little curveball that Ugly Kid Joe throw in. So we actually got a cover of Park Life, Blur's Park Life. It was almost like a dare. They kind of like Whit sort of threw it over to Chris, and he's like, "Do you want to work your magic?" And it's clearly like he's got this theory that he can make any crowd just go crazy. He just got this repertoire of songs. He drops in the right songs, and everyone just goes for it. So Park Life, which to be fair, he played and sung perfectly. It was quite impressive, and yeah, the crowd went crazy for it. But
fair play. I do love that band, always will. So yeah, long may they continue. Quickly, Enslaved, Svalbard, and Wayfarer. We went to Islington Assembly Hall, which is a lovely venue, I must admit. Delightful place. Again, really expensive beer, but I think that's just par for the course. But
who isn't selling expensive beer these days?
Exactly. So we'll move on from that. We'll be here all fucking night. Wayfarer thought were really good, weren't they?
Yeah, I know nothing about Wayfarer other than there's so much enthusiasm for them.
Yeah, massively. You can see why though. You know what they made me think of Opeth in the early days.
Right.
Without all the comedy and the banter, but seeing Opeth 20 plus years ago, it made me feel like that. Touches of the extreme metal, but there's something other going on in the mix. I thought they were really, really good, and I'm hoping they'll come back and do some headline shows. I think they will, because they went down really well.
I'd like to see them again with a bit more, just knowledge of the material. So listen to go back knowing the songs. I think would just take it up another level for me.
Yeah, I recognised enough from listening to American Gothic, the current album. I haven't listened to any previous stuff, but yeah, really enjoyed them. Svalbard, we were both a little bit indifferent to Svalbard, weren't we?
Yeah, that was a funny one for me. And I think what I said on the night was, I'm looking at the stage and I'm seeing a rock band and they're thrashing away at their guitars. And I don't know what they're using, what sort of processing they're using on the guitars, but all I could hear was keyboards.
Yeah.
Like this synthy wash. And it like I've got nothing against a synthy wash. As much as I've got nothing against guitars, but it was jarring for me to be looking at one thing and hearing another. And I thought, why not just make more of that sound if present it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it will come over a little bit better. So it was just a bit of a jarring experience.
Yeah, it was odd. It's first, look, we like Svalbard, and the last album's really good. Like, I like everything they've done, and they're quite a unique package. But yeah, it just didn't quite. Maybe it would work better in a much smaller venue. I don't know, but it didn't quite kind of hit the spot. Enslaved, on the other hand, properly fucking did.
Yeah.
Just such a classy band, and the way they delivered it live. I last saw Enslaved way back halfway through the day at Bloodstock, 2009, I think, maybe 08, 09, something like that. But this, they were just so good, so slick. They were funny. There was some great banter from the stage. The new stuff sounded incredible. And even the older songs, the songs they played off Below the Lights, just sounded amazing, just sounded huge.
And when they used a synthy wash, they had a keyboard player there or a little like effects pad there. You know, you could see it all happening and playing out, and it became part of the performance. But yeah, I mean, everything you said is true. It was just a classy, a classy metal gig from an experienced band that just know what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's a shame he didn't come. Don't shake your head at me.
I so wanted to be there, but it's just the circumstances of travel and whatnot. And
look, midweek, even for me was a pain in the ass. But
and you know what, the venue wasn't full. I don't know if this is.
No, it wasn't.
So this is like Islington Assembly Room, which is effectively like the town hall. And I don't know if this is how they sell for that venue, or if it just or if they just didn't sell that many tickets. I mean, it was full enough, but it's one of those gigs where you felt you could quite easily just sort of walk up, mingle around in the crowd, and position yourself quite easily.
It's not helping. No.
They'll be back.
Hopefully, I'll see them at Bloodstock. But yeah, I will make a point next time around. It's just, but by that point, I will know the back catalogue more anyway. So
yeah, and it was. I think they played 3 songs off Below the Lights. So obviously, most of their songs are quite long. It was like an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 20, hour and 30 set list and whatnot. Having Joe Quayle was really cool as well. That added an extra dimension.
Yeah.
It's everything about it was just. I left slightly early to catch a train. I missed the last couple of minutes, but I just walked away thinking they were just a very, very cool, very special band. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing them again. Right, so let's talk about Creeper in Margate, tonight's headline act, which was a great night, I must admit. I quite taken by Margate, really liked it. A couple of great bars as well. The Bob Geldof lookalike, everything, all of that.
Oh man, I told you, I stayed on for a couple of days and I saw him out every night.
Oh, you did, didn't you?
Bob Geldof, every bar. And we went to a different bar every night because we're in a new town, so we're checking stuff out. And there's Bob.
Yeah, we have to keep an eye out for him now. Actually,
Margate lifer.
I also have to describe him as like the least Bob Geldof lookalike you've ever seen. I think that first night we'd all had a bit to drink. We're all in high spirits, and this man passed who looked a little bit, if you squint, like Bob Geldof. We were calling him Bob all night, and then he started playing up to it and talking about how he doesn't like Mondays, and all this banter started coming out. And I saw him the next night, and I was like, he really doesn't look like Bob Geldof at all.
It's amazing how different things look when you're sober. The Fez as well, that bar was great. The Tunnocks tea cakes and the caramel wafers, brilliant, lovely touch. Just constant playing of ABBA and whatnot. Just really, really, really good fun. Look, I really enjoyed it. But let's talk about the gig. Let's talk about Creeper, because we obviously waxed lyrical, God knows how much, about Sangravore last year, and we were really looking forward to this gig in a relatively small venue, and the mass enthusiasm for it as well from the crowd. Really mixed bag as well, wasn't it? Everything from late 50s down to uber goth teenagers, the full works.
This is it. I mean, I said it's like, I hope it sells out. I'm not sure it did in the end, but
may not have been a sellout, but it certainly wouldn't have been far off, I don't think.
No. I because we got Canterbury down the road, so you're gonna have a few of the sort of younger emos and goths and whatnot, the rock crowd.
Yeah,
and you got like you say, we've got a decent sized alternative community down here, but yeah, it was pleasing to see a good mix of people, to see the old goths, the ones who were probably you know, dancing in Full Tilt in the early 90s. And some old crusties, plenty, you know, there was a few patch jackets dotted about the place, just as much as you had the younger crowd. So yeah, that's what you want to see. You don't want to feel too old, and you don't want to feel too young, whatever age you are, unless you're really old or really young, which you're going to. So tough shit. So yeah, that was a really good sign for me. But it's a weird one because I think we got into there, didn't we? It was at Dreamland, which is the fairground complex, and they do have the big outdoor shows in the summer, which is like 7K capacity, I think.
Yeah.
We didn't know what it was because I haven't actually been in there for 30 years into that complex. It's been up and down over the years, half closed, half not. And you go in and you sort of go inside, and it's basically the old ballroom, but it's a very basic layout, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure people have come across places like that. It reminded me a bit of a student union first.
I was expecting and hoping for like a proper 1920s Art Deco ballroom, but we didn't get that. But,
no, I mean it's an Art Deco building, and I think they've just kept the really simple stuff inside there.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I had a little bit of trepidation to begin with, because obviously we're getting our beers and the support bands, etc., are playing, and you know I like what they do, and I saw my Bloodstock, but they didn't quite have the sound I think turned on for that. I think they were just obviously just sorting it out and using them.
A bit flat, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was a bit flat, yeah, and whatnot. But you know the crowd gave them a go and respected them, so you know fair play to that. But I think the trepidation came with the fact we talked about places like this, places far out, possibly in the middle of nowhere, you know, not big cities, not big towns that get rock gigs. And it can go a bit either way, can't it?
Yeah.
And I recall a gig I went to a few months before COVID kicked off. I went to see a band called The Excerpts in Aldershot. And I don't know if you've heard of this band. I mean, they're sort of pop punk. They're Scottish trio. They've been knocking around for 10 plus years, but they very much sound like a very typical sort of more indie emo band of the mid noughties. They've got that sort of crowd interested in. It's got that sort of loose anthemic quality, and I was always umming and ahhing about them, to be honest. But I got friends in that neck of the woods. It was a gig. It was an opportunity. It was cheap, and it was weird because I don't know if you've ever been to Aldershot, but
I've been to Aldershot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's an old Hampshire town, very sort of lower sort of middle class, but it's probably only kept going because of the army base nearby, which has you know sort of kept it lively. But you know, the feeling of it these days is it's a little bit desolate and a bit derelict. I found. I mean, we went to Wetherspoons for a drink and a meal beforehand, and it's like everyone in Aldershot was there, but it didn't feel welcome. So we went to the gig, which was basically, and I kid you not, this was the council hall, so to speak. It had that, you know, this wasn't probably like Islington Town Hall where it's got a bit of a vibrancy about it. It was literally like you're going to see a small play one evening that your kids are in. And the whole vibe of this gig was really weird. It's like there were fans who, you know, from roughly in the sort of area who'd come to see them and would normally see them in London. But there were some locals who went to see a rock band come to play. But it's almost like the whole gig, no one knows what to bloody well do. Do we mosh? Do we jump? Do we sing? It's got that sort of weirdness of like, this isn't normal seeing a band like this in a venue like that. And for the whole gig, the band saying, come on, guys, make a bit of effort. They're not getting angry. It's just a really awkward vibe, really uncomfortable. And I left that gig thinking, I don't like that band, but that's fair enough. But I've never experienced anything like it before. And I briefly, for a few seconds, had that feeling in Margate. I thought, this might be bad. This might be one of those uncomfortable moments. And it fucking wasn't.
Hooray!
It wasn't. But it's, you know, Margate is not Aldershot. Like I say, Margate you know, it's further out. You've got your alternative community. You've got that seaside vibe.
It's a bit more bohemian, and there's a bit more going on.
It is absolutely, and I think that's probably what did it. But yeah, you know, all the students sort of nearby, sort of making the effort. But yeah, the setup was quite straightforward, wasn't it? There wasn't a great, you know, it wasn't an elaborate show that they're probably doing for the bigger venues and the future arena shows. But I think what was good for them, and probably unsurprising, is that this was pretty much an equal set list from all their albums. You know, they opened with fucking "Cry to Heaven," for Christ's sake.
Yeah, that took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that at all.
You know, I mean, okay, great, fine. I mean, that's my favourite song, but whatever. And then they launched into Poison Pens, which was one of the old school, like proper sort of emo punk turbo sort of, you know, the kind of stuff I thought, not my thing at the time. But fucking hell, the crowd just like, okay, fuck, I'm getting out of here, because it just went nuts. And I think there were probably a few old farts, including my neighbours next door, bless them, who were like, no, not for us at this age, kind of thing. But that was it. That was great. That's what you want, kind of thing. And you know, we're gonna get the anthems. We're gonna get the 9-minute song. You know, sort of Jim Steinman thing at some point. So yeah, let's go with the old stuff. And you know what? I've got into the old stuff a bit more. I think there's the first album is still very sort of Misfits meets My Chemical Romance, but there is some good stuff there. Second album reminds me very much of a sort of Britpop indie album, I think, with a bit of Americana thrown in. So, you know, there is a lot of depth there, but you know, the band were up for it. They gave it their all. There was no sort of weirdness in that regard. You know, it was a great way to start a tour, I think, and yeah, I'm really pleased it happened.
The thing is the band and the crowd's reactions to the band really kind of made it. It was because, as you've described to me, it was like going to a gig in some sort of I don't know, it was like a conference room or something like that. It's almost like, you know, today is Creeper and tomorrow it's going to be some training exercise for a bunch of bankers.
First aid course,
But yeah, first aid course, or for some, not bankers, but you know, some sort of corporate training day. It just had that air where there's a caretaker in there somewhere, has to put the chairs out or put them away, depending on what's happening, you know, that night. So we walk into this really stark looking room. It's just got no character or personality or anything. And the whole place just lit up, you know, and that's just down to the relationship between the band and the fans. And, you know, they made it.
I think the Rocky Horror intro music was
Time Warp. Yeah,
doing the Time Warp. I thought that was brilliant because all the goths you got in the room, they absolutely loved that, and it just puts you in that, you know, that good mood. And they come out, they do Cry to Heaven, which I'm the same. I was kind of expecting that later in the set, if not a set closer. But fair play, they come out and do that first. The one thing I noticed is, like you were saying about the earlier stuff, that My Chemical Romance meets Misfits kind of, it's never grabbed me. You know, I've gone back over it since Sangavore came out. It still doesn't grab me now. But live, those songs sound completely different. There's way more intensity to it. It's a lot more Misfits than it is My Chemical Romance.
Yeah,
a lot more aggressive, and they've got a front man that properly delivers it. Whether it's punk anthems or whether it is, like you say, Further Than Forever, fucking full Steinman-esque, absolute over the top pomp rock. You know, he does the lot. He's got a good voice. He sounds great. He's got great interaction with the crowd. The set closer, which is a song I wasn't massively familiar with, but when it got to that point where he just stopped and the crowd sang it all, and it should be almost a little bit anticlimactic, but you can see the band were like genuinely taken back by the way the crowd just took on the song. And I think that's really fucking cool. And like I said, that may not have happened, but it did. So it does make you think that these bands, they need to get out and do these regional shows. Trivium did it last year, doing places like fucking Dover and Folkestone it was, wasn't it? And Cambridge and all these places. And I think more bands need to do that kind of thing because it helps them reconnect with smaller crowds. Because Creeper, make no mistake, they will be doing arenas. They are an arena band. They've got that delivery. They've got the songs. That will be where they go. And it just gave them an opportunity to reconnect. And it looks like All the other gigs around the country went down really well as well. That's the key. That's why this band, I think, if they build on what they're doing now, they're going to go a long way. Download could be a big moment for them. Main stage, they could pick up a lot of fans. You know, and it was just a really triumphant gig. It was really good fun. The atmosphere was great. Margate was great. And it just so many fucking great songs. So fair play to them. Just a brilliant, brilliant band.
Yeah, and just to pick up on the, you know, because that sense, you know, it was a Jolly Boys outing, you know, to use the cliche. It's like
Absolutely.
we're all, you know, I mean, well, obviously not for you, Ant, being a local, but you know, we all kind of come down there to, you know, to have fun for the night in a different place, different environment, different venues. Yeah, the whole thing was different. But I think Margate is on the verge of being a real draw for live music.
Yeah,
you know,
completely agree.
Whatever's going to happen with Dreamland and how they develop it, obviously Live Nation are involved, so there's a lot of money there, and the ability to put on some really big shows. And I think, you know, in 4 or 5 years, that's going to be a major venue, you know, on tours, and you know that's great. I'm all for it. I'm all for it because I think it's going to be when they get that place right. I think it's a quirky little place, but it's got the potential to be a really cool venue. You know, if they do it right, I think they need to tap into the whole heritage and history of that site as Dreamland and the fairground thing. You know, and if they can then incorporate that into it as a venue, it'll be a lot of fun. I'd be going to more gigs in Margate, I think.
Well, look, transport links are decent to Margate. I know it's a long way out, but it's a good link from London. You've got Canterbury, which is a massive student city. So yeah, there is definitely scope. You've got this Margate Rock Festival. They're announcing the headliners as we are Saturday night, which will be really and there's some real curveballs on that lineup as well. Cobra Spell, Witch Hazel. You know, you've got obviously bands like Famine who are based in Kent and some other British bands, but it's 50% sold out. So that just shows there's definitely a hunger down there for it, and I reckon that is the case all over the country.
I mean, it's a nerdy thing to say, but the train companies have committed to servicing Margate well in the summer.
Good.
And making sure people can get home back to London, because that's one of the big things that puts people off is transport. If I can't get home, I can't go to the gig. That was me with Enslaved.
And we were lucky. You lived down there, so we got somewhere to stay. But you know what? I would 100% go back to Margate for a gig, whether you lived there or not. You know, so.
That's it. Well, that's it. You actually take the day off this time, and you go down there and sit on the beach and get your feet wet.
Yeah, exactly. It was just something quite cool about that. We all go to gigs in London, and it's all great, loads of venues and loads of great bars, all of that. But sometimes it just makes a change. Like when we went to Bristol to see Municipal Waste, it just makes a change to get to somewhere different. And even that, to a certain extent, is still another big city. But these regional towns, and I'd like to get out to more of those types of gigs. You know, if there's a gig somewhere that's a bit interesting, rather than seeing it in London, let's go somewhere different and just get a bit of a different vibe. And you do get, and I know this is a cliche, but you do get hungrier crowds outside of London.
Oh,
there is that whole London thing in there. You stand there and you have your arms folded and you're like, oh, come on then, impress me. I've seen all this before.
They can be really aloof, you know.
Yeah. So that's that. I think that all that added to the enjoyment of the night. And you know, yes, we got back to Anthony's house at 2 a.m. and yes, I was in work first thing the next morning. But do I give a fuck? Absolutely not.
You missed out on the bacon sandwiches, though. You know,
I had a McDonald's breakfast. I was fine. I felt fuck it. I was just like death warmed up, but it was absolutely worth it. So yeah, long may it continue. We'll come down for the Margate Rock Festival in October, and I hope loads of other people do. So yeah, all good. Stay there. Just stay. Don't move. Just stay there.
Well.
So yeah. Right. Just before we go, then. So next up for us, towards the end of April, we'll be down in Bristol. Well, myself and Bean and cultural advisor to the podcast, Gav. Unfortunately, Ant won't be there with us, but we'll be down there for the Black City Records 3rd birthday party weekender, which is looking like a fucking great weekend. For some reason, we're DJing, mad. We'll also be talking a load of nonsense because we're comparing for the weekend as well. We'll be DJing Friday night. Black City Records will be DJing Saturday night. So we've got Flame Bearer. We've got Wunder, a crumbling moon. Under a crumbling moon. Who else we got? Wretched Soul, Shrapnel. Yes, it's a fucking good little lineup, isn't it? Good
I
little
cannot
weekend,
wait.
Griffin.
I cannot wait. Love Bristol. Had a great time when I was there. Yeah, like Black City Records deserves to be celebrated. So it's going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, greatest record shop in the world, and we're coming down, and we're going to be balls deep in you, and it's going to be it's going to be very messy, I'm sure, but I'm really looking forward to it. So if you're in the Bristol area, that Friday night, Saturday night, 19th and 20th of April, get in there. It's going to be really good fun. You're probably only looking at 50 tickets a night in the Griffin, so I reckon it'll be absolutely fucking jam-packed. The Bristol Metal Quarter, isn't it? So what more can you ask for?
Absolutely.
You know, next thing we need to form is the Margate Metal Quarter. Spread it out to the world. You know, even as far as fucking Margate. One thing I will say about Margate is that tower block needs to go.
Well, there are people living in that tower block. I thought that was like a derelict building. It's empty. It's not. I was chatting to someone the next day that lives in there, and actually they said it was a lovely place to live. So go figure.
It's that place. What I gather, it's like high rise but good.
Yeah, it didn't look at it from the outside.
No, I mean it's a brutalist nightmare.
It's proper brutalist stuff.
But I think it's part of Margate's history and culture at this point, and it doesn't surprise me that it's.
I mean, for anyone's never visited Margate, it's like it's quite a bright and breezy town, but like looking over it is this big black monolithic building.
Well, it is. It's like something out of the Ballard book. So
yeah, basically, it's a terrifying looking thing. But you're right. I suppose if it's part of Margate history, but it really does. It needs to go. Yes. So but look, on that note, we'll call it a night. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week, where we're going to go back over some of our favorite discoveries over the last couple of years. Are we just all those bands? Certainly since doing this podcast, because we're 2 years in now. It's our 2-year anniversary, roughly around about now. We got the Bleeding and Fracture Point and Sanhedrin tomorrow night. A celebration in Chelmsford, but over the last 2 years, all the shit that we've discovered, all the great bands, all the stuff that, I don't know, if we weren't doing this podcast, we may not have even discovered. Who knows? But we'll be waffling on about that for an hour or so. So, yeah, look forward to that. So until then, thanks for listening. Once again, thanks for listening for the last 2 years. All the new listeners that we're getting recently in some real far-flung places as well. So welcome to those who are joining us from Hungary, South Korea. We had a listener in Papua New Guinea last week, which is fucking unreal. So welcome to you all. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you carry on listening in the future. I will stop waffling now, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Stay metal.